Another shakeup as another SEC job is open. One of the best in the entire country. LSU needs a new head coach. Who should it be?
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. I don't remember a coaching carousel like this, but we have got a doozy. The AP poll is out of control. Oklahoma and Ole Miss, what's next for those two teams after quite the game in Norman? This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Brian Kelly out. I'm not here to talk about why that needed to happen. I already did that on Sunday's show. Check it out if you missed it. But before this happened, I said, yeah, you got to move on. This can't be acceptable. It's not. LSU said as much. The athletic director said this is not the level that LSU expects. And this is 100% the right move. In year 4, you just can't be going backwards. And LSU is doing just that. Here's another interesting wrinkle to LSU firing Brian Kelly. Hugh Freeze won over the weekend, beat Arkansas on the road after making a quarterback change. If the Tigers wait too long, could they miss out on top tier targets? Because you are competing with two programs that just on a surface level are better jobs than you. Not that Auburn's a bad job. It isn't. I think Auburn is a good job. Florida and LSU, if you ask me to rank my 10 best head coaching jobs in all of college football, Florida and LSU are inside the top 10. That doesn't mean their programs are top 10 in college football. They're not, because the wrong people have been running them for the last several years. But if you are able to go out and make the right hire, they will ascend quickly towards the top of the sport. Now, the other reason this is so fascinating, Brian Kelly and his staff are going to be owed a bunch of money. A bunch of money. And Billy Napier is owed a bunch of money. And James Franklin is owed a bunch of money. Is this the Curt Cignetti effect? His instant success at a historical doormat. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt gets this description as well. Those two guys succeeding with those two programs. Is that the reason these schools are willing to pay so much money? I think it's a contributing factor. When Vanderbilt has passed you by, Vanderbilt controls its own destiny to go to the college football playoff, a place that Baton Rouge and Gainesville fans are not going to experience or come anywhere close to doing so this season. I thought LSU would be better this year because I thought that Garrett Nussmeier would be able to have a better season. Turns out the Tigers just have no idea how to play offense for 4 quarters. That's not okay, hence the change being made. But when Vanderbilt and Indiana are way ahead of you, yeah, that puts the pressure on. I'm not saying it's the only factor. I am here telling you it is definitely a factor. Because when you look around and go, wait, we're what program? We're Florida? We're LSU? Yeah, we shouldn't be behind. Yeah, this isn't good enough anymore. So Florida and LSU, two of the top 5, 10 jobs, probably 2 top 5 jobs in all of college football, are just sitting there open. And I see a bunch of names out there. The one that popped into my head immediately is Jon Sumrall. Jon Sumrall is the head coach at Tulane. He has been down in that area for a while, winning in the state of Louisiana. The Green Wave have been really good for the last couple of years. He was at Troy before that. The dude just wins. Does that feel like the right hire for LSU? Because like Penn State, there are similarities here. Because of the amount of money invested into the coach who's now been fired and how much it costs to fire that head coach, you can't screw this one up. Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher is the perfect example. When they went out to get Mike Elko, that had to be right. Because if it wasn't, you were just putting yourself in significant financial peril to pay that much dead money to coaches who are not employed by your university anymore. And so LSU has to get this one right if you pay that much money, which of course they did. That's why previously I had been told, and I think the sentiment down in Baton Rouge was, no, it won't get to the point where they'll fire him. It costs too much. Well, here we are. They found the money. Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a will. So Jon Sumrall popped into my head. Lane Kiffin popped into my head. I'd rate those two coaches on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the best hire I think you could possibly make. 1 being, I don't know why this name is even popping up on any list anywhere. I'd rate Jon Sumrall at about a 7. I would rate Lane Kiffin at a 9, maybe even a 9.5. If Kiffin isn't going to Florida, apparently had a meeting, told his team he wasn't going to be the head coach there, well, once upon a time, I believe Lincoln Riley uttered some similar words to somebody about being the head coach at Oklahoma. He's, of course, been in Los Angeles for the last several seasons. Lists get made when a job comes available. Who's going to be a target? Who could be interested? Who could be a good fit? I think Lane Kiffin would be a 9.5. If you can win at Ole Miss, why can you not win at LSU? And Lane Kiffin is one at places apart from that. If Florida can't get him there, maybe LSU can. Maybe he views LSU as a significantly better job than Florida. I don't know why that would be the case. I think they're both elite. But I don't know every single inner working administratively with those two universities and the support that they give to the football program. I think it's pretty high. I know the fan support is high. But what about everything else? There's a lot that goes into a head coach considering whether he's going to take a job, whether he feels like it's a position where he can go and actually find success. So, yeah, Lane Kiffin's name I think would be good. I think Jon Sumrall could do well. Here are some other lists. Here are names that I've seen thrown out there from various sites. James Franklin. James Franklin would be a 2. James Franklin would be a 2. James Franklin would be a 9 hire for Wisconsin, or if Tim Skipper doesn't want the job at UCLA, James Franklin would be a 9 caliber hire. Virginia Tech, I think that might be something that could work out. But LSU is a program that expects to go win and compete for national championships. So too is Penn State. That's why they made the change. I wouldn't try a coach who's shown you what he is. I think in these sorts of spots, there's going to be some inherent risk or gamble, unless another hire that would be probably around a 9, in my view, is Marcus Freeman. Hey, you went to the well once and it didn't work, but maybe you're the meme of the miner who is digging underground and he's almost to the diamonds and then he decides to turn back. Maybe Marcus Freeman is that collection of diamonds. And that's the guy you can go get. He's doing really well at Notre Dame. I think he'd do very well at LSU. I'd give Marcus Freeman a 9. But James Franklin, no. A guy who has established the ceiling for himself as a head coach, high floor, not the ceiling you're looking for. Not at LSU, not after the last several years. The other name I think is interesting is Joe Brady, because every other name that gets tossed out, at least that I've seen, get tossed out unless there's somebody under the radar. You know, I've seen Nick Saban's name or Dabo Swinney. No. We're not going back to the 2010s. This has to be a forward-looking sort of move. I think you want somebody that you feel like has legitimate upside. Joe Brady would be really interesting, because he had a lot of success, of course, as a member of the offensive staff when LSU won the national championship with Joe Burrow. And it would be, at least in theory, given his track record in the NFL and with the Tigers, it would be kind of an opposite hire of Brian Kelly, who's the CEO, the culture guy. They'd be going to get a scheme guy, play calling guru, offensive maestro. That wasn't necessarily Brian Kelly's calling card. He's the CEO who has to hire well. Well, his first offensive coordinator was good. His second one was not. His first defensive coordinator was bad. His second one was not. Maybe you go and shore up one side of the ball, a la Brent Venables at Oklahoma. Just something to think about. Kirby Smart at Georgia. Got there. Bulldogs have been good on defense for a long time. Not this year. But when they won their 2 national championships, boy, the defense played really, really well. And Kirby Smart, of course, has his fingerprints all over that particular side of the ball. So I wouldn't go for the high floor, safe move if I were Florida or LSU, because I think the standards, the expectations, and the recent history has just trended too far in the direction of let's go for a solid hire. Let's go for a good move. I think Penn State applies to this particular mindset as well, or at least they should. I can't wait to watch all these hires play out and talk about them here on the show. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. The AP poll is out of bounds. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I love it. You love it. The tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why you want to use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I have used Game Time several times within the last year. The process is really easy. I have found great deals every time. I have saved money on seats in the section that I looked at on other sites and saw, wait, it was going to be more expensive if I didn't use Game Time, but I found a great deal. Process was easy, got right to my phone, no issues whatsoever. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. The most ridiculous AP poll admissions to date. Washington and Iowa unranked. Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies is here. We'll get to the Hawkeyes as well as start with Washington. I don't get it, Roman. And you know what? I actually did understand Washington being just outside when they were 5-1. I had them in that spot because of the caliber of schedule they'd played compared to others. But at this point, when they beat a ranked team by 17 points, they got no help.
Should have been a lot more.
Yep, they got no help from the officiating crew. And they were the significantly better team from start to finish. They outplayed a good, not great, but good Illinois team. And Washington, not even in the top 25. They don't even have as many voting points as Tulane, who I have in my top 25, sure, but not as high as Washington, and Navy. The disrespect on the Huskies here, Roman, is wild, and it applies to Iowa as well.
And it's just absolutely exhausting at this point. I hear you when you say 5-1. Yeah, who have you beaten? And sure, like sitting here at 6-2, I wasn't overly enthralled with this Illinois team coming into the year, but you still beat a ranked team. This was the biggest thing that, you know, I've heard around Washington for weeks. Because 2 weeks ago, after the Rutgers game, I was like, why is Washington not ranked heading into this matchup against Michigan? Obviously, that didn't go the way that anybody hoped it would, for on the Husky side of things, at least. But Washington has all of the pieces. They have all the talent in the world. I obviously know that has nothing to do, you know, with rankings at the end of the day, is who's on your team for the most part. But I look at this Husky team and I don't understand it anymore. It just, Spencer, it feels like the old anti-Pac-12 bias at this point in time. Like, what else could it be? Like, legitimately, what else could it be? I've been like trying to just breathe and downplay this a little bit, but it's just exhausting. It's just absolutely exhausting. There's no reason that Washington should not be ranked at this point in time. You go and you watch that team play every week, especially when it's executing. Jed Fish called his best game of the season this last week against Illinois. It was tremendous. The only possession that Washington didn't score on, outside of sitting on the ball at the end of the game, was a self-inflicted wound, which I know is all too common for that team this year, where Decker DeGraff dropped a wide open pass that should have moved the sticks on 3rd and 2 on just like a little slip route. Like, Washington has just done everything you've wanted it to. In year 2 under Jed Fish, you've seen leaps and bounds from every position group. They are very clearly a much better team. They're beating who they're supposed to beat, and they're doing it soundly. They're doing it very, very soundly. There's no reason this team shouldn't be ranked at this point in time.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. I think the justification would come down to the way the losses have looked. They got controlled by Ohio State. Okay.
It was a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter.
That too, which also makes me wonder,
Michigan.
Are people that are voting watching a lot of these games?
No.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not is
not.
The actual answer. Like, could you guys at least, when you cast your votes before you do it, can you at least check out extended highlights on YouTube? Just do us that courtesy. It would influence your votes at least a little bit, just so you can know what it's like. But you went to the, West Coast bias angle of it. USC's not struggling with that. Oregon isn't struggling with that. It feels like Washington just can't get a foothold in the mind of the AP voters. I don't know if they're stuck on last year's team or if they're stuck on a preseason or lack of a preseason top 25 ranking, which again, I agree with, but I'm looking at my top 25 every week, which includes Washington and it includes Iowa this week. And I am looking almost exclusively at what your resume is and what your accomplishments are. And when I make my second worst pick of the year in a game, taking Minnesota to upset Iowa, and then the Hawkeyes blow them out, it's bested only by Illinois getting lambasted by Indiana earlier this year. When that's what you do in that spot, and I go, yeah, I think you could lose to Minnesota at home, rivalry game, and Minnesota's been playing sneaky good, and you just dismantle them.
Sure.
It looked like it was Ohio State playing Minnesota. Yeah. Like, there wasn't that much of a difference in the score, and Iowa just gets no respect at all, and Washington plays a team that these same voters have ranked last week, and it's just, you don't get credit for that. Texas got credit for beating Oklahoma. Fine. I don't have them ranked. I still don't have them ranked.
Nor should you.
No, Texas being ranked and Washington being unranked is the plainest example of SEC bias that you can point out in the AP voters' thinking here.
Oh, absolutely. And, Spencer, I know there's that other show you do that we don't have to talk about right now since you are, as of this moment, neutral arbiter of college football.
Yes, this is very true.
But for both of those teams, you're in the Big Ten now. This shouldn't be an issue, but here we are. Here we are doing this yet again. And you can look into all these advanced numbers that you want. The ESPN FPI has them in the top 25. The strength of record, whatever, it has them in the top 20. Or one of those other strength of whatever, since ESPN has about 7,000 of those, the SEC biased site that it is. But I look at all of these numbers, and you look at whatever else, it doesn't make sense for either of these Big Ten teams, really, for Washington or for Iowa. I know I just said this, but what else can you do? Let me
throw this at you as just another point to support what we're saying. So I didn't have Memphis ranked last week, and I don't have Memphis ranked this week. They are close because Memphis's loss is to UAB, who fired Trent Dilfer earlier this year. Now, Memphis got a big win in the American against South Florida. It has G5 playoff ramifications. I am not denying that. How in the world am I supposed to treat the South Florida win the same as the Illinois win? And I go, well, the other thing you look at with resumes, not just the wins, but the losses. So Washington's lost to top 25 Michigan on the road, got beat. And number 1 Ohio State, competitive, but got beat at home. And Memphis's losses to UAB. So I don't have a win on Memphis's resume that is as good as Illinois by 17 points. And the losses, the quality losses, which comes into everybody's thinking here, also favors Washington.
Right. This is the problem. No, this is the biggest problem. I don't want to hear they played UC Davis, they played Washington State. I straight up don't care anymore. We are in Big Ten conference play now, and Washington again has handled quite outside of the Maryland game. They still overcame 20 points. They scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to come back from a 20-0 deficit in that game. You've handled the teams that you were supposed to handle, and Washington very clearly still has a big leap ahead of them to compete with the Ohio States of the world, the Indianas of the world, if you will now, the Michigans. And that's understandable. That's fine. Especially, to bring it back to what you're talking about earlier about maybe people are still thinking about last season, thinking about preseason, whatever it might be. This is just so clearly not last year's Washington team, where I know early on in the year they were ranked for like a week or two, and then the Apple Cup debacle happens, and it just felt like everyone wanted to not touch UW from that point on. This is just so clearly not that team. And I have to bring it back to the Stars for a minute or two here, because that should give you some kind of power and some kind of edge. When you look in the Big Ten, there is no reason that DeMond Williams should be outside of anyone's top 3 quarterbacks in the conference at this point in time with the way that kid is playing. There's absolutely no reason for that. And if there's any kind of tiebreaker, it should be this versus that, DeMond Williams should give Washington the edge in any situation like that.
Iowa also deserves their credit here.
They do. They absolutely do.
Tight win over Penn State, 37-0 at Wisconsin. Their losses are by a combined 8 points to number 2 Indiana and then 16th ranked Iowa State by 3 points in a rivalry game. Those are their losses. They can't crack the top 25. And Bama, who again I have inside my top 5 because of the caliber of their wins, just gets a mulligan with Florida State, who's a winless ACC team. A winless. I just want to hear the logic of an AP voter that goes through the top 25 and says, I'm not putting Iowa in there. And I want them to come at some point and say, well, they lost to unranked Iowa State. A top 5 team lost to unranked 0-3 or 4, whatever it is in ACC play, Florida State. This stuff is annoying. And look, let's wrap on this because I'm sure plenty of people have the mindset, don't worry about the rankings, look forward, just focus on everything will take care of itself. I hear that. I'm just telling you that this is a perception sport. There are at-large bids. Washington will not be playing for a Big Ten championship. The perception of the team matters, and that they might have to win at least their next 2, maybe their next 3, just to be ranked going into the game against Oregon at the end of the year is really absurd.
And this is what we're going to hear. It's, their next 3 games are Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA. So we're going to hear the same thing. It's, you're beating teams at the bottom of the Big Ten. Who cares? You can only play who's in front of you. But to bring it full circle, I'm sure you saw the hilarious post that's been circulated on Twitter as we record this today on Sunday of, look at this gutsy Alabama win over preseason number 13 South Carolina.
I can't with the SEC homer counts, man.
I was this close to saying, well, Illinois was number 9 in week 3. So does that, should that apply on both sides here? No, that's an SEC thing alone, and I'm tired of it.
The SEC fanboys, that's one of those anonymous SEC fanboy accounts. It's obnoxious. It's obnoxious. I don't even want to give them the airtime because they're just so patently absurd. Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies is, however, not absurd. That's why we bring him on the show.
Yeah.
Oklahoma. I saw their flaws earlier this year, and they... Oklahoma. What does Oklahoma do now? First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket in the game to fourth quarter comebacks and everything in between. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And college football is here, and of course, FanDuel's got college football. My best bets are on fire. Best stretch of the year. Back-to-back winning weeks. 3-2, the Utah late cover. It was a no sweat, no doubt. Utah blew out Colorado, delivered a 3-2 week. The best bets have needed that. I'm inching closer to 500. If I can get past that on the season, boy, we'll have done quite the thing. If you want to fade the picks, though, hey, FanDuel.com. I can't blame you. Got off to a rough start this year. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Earlier this year, I picked Oklahoma to win 2 pretty notable games. I picked them to beat Michigan at home. I picked them to beat Auburn at home in the Jackson Arnold return to Norman. They won those games. And a lot of people suddenly bought in. Oklahoma is here. Oklahoma is an SEC championship contender. Oklahoma should be able to have a shot at the playoff. Tough back half of the schedule, but look at what they've already done so far. And yes, I did pick them to win because they were at home over the week. I did not change my expectation of the Sooners from what I had them at before the year, which was 8-4. Looks like a pretty likely record at this point in time. They have Missouri and LSU at home to end the season, following a road game, a bye, and another road game against Tennessee and Alabama. They might lose both of those and then win the final 2 down the stretch and wind up right where I had them before the season. Oklahoma is having a good year. I'm not going to look back and dub the season a failure because they didn't make the SEC championship game or because they lost to Ole Miss at home and their defense let them down. Of all of the things to come up short in a big spot, Oklahoma's defense couldn't get off the field. I'll get to Ole Miss. I will get to Ole Miss. I will. But I want to start with the Sooners because they're having one of the more kind of unique seasons. I think because of the way their schedule is set up, it's a lot easier on the front. It is a lot tougher on the back. It's not going to be easy, and they control their own destiny to get into the playoff. 9-3 will give them a chance 10-2 will get them in. They'd have to win all 4 games in that spot. I don't expect them to do that. Oklahoma, though, has taken a step forward. This was a pressure year for Brent Venables after a season in which they went 6-7, ending with a loss to Navy. To Navy? I don't care who was or wasn't playing in the bowl game. You shouldn't lose to Navy. You're the Oklahoma Sooners, for goodness sake. But that's a real thing that happened. So that was a sour end to a disappointing year. And the Sooners reload. They come back. Defense looks really good. That's Brent Venables' specialty. He's calling the plays. He's really good at that. Wasn't good enough on Saturday. But Oklahoma's not a finished product, and I never thought they were. It's why I didn't pick them to go to the playoff or the SEC championship game, and why my perception of them didn't really change after they won those 2 games earlier this year. I think there was an overreaction element to go, well, look at what they did. And yeah, I picked them to beat Texas. I picked them to beat Ole Miss. But coming down the stretch, I always thought it was going to be difficult. There are going to be more losses here. This is a team that still does not consistently throw the football. John Mateer has shown some limitations. The injury has not helped. I fully concede that. There's a bigger problem at play. Oklahoma's one-dimensional. And what some of us were pointing out, even after the wins, was, hey, your entire offense is number 10. There's no consistent help from receivers. When he doesn't make a perfect throw, there is no running game. There is no screen game. There's nothing. There's just number 10. When Oklahoma finally had a 100-yard rusher this year, it came at South Carolina, who's not a great team. I don't think they're a horrible one. They're not having a good season, but they're not great. They're not great, but Oklahoma played well in that game. What'd they do? They ran the ball. They had a 100-yard rusher, and that is what has been missing, what I felt like was missing all year. Like, wait a minute, they brought in Jay Knott from Cal. That was a big transfer portal move. Where is he? Where is? Okay, he's not the number 1 guy. Fine, he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy. But where exactly? And I know Xavier Robinson ended up with 100 rushing yards in this game because he broke some big ones. That's good and fine, and the offense is productive. But this just goes back to what I was saying. They're not there. I think they could get there. I think Brent Venables is doing more than enough to keep his job. I don't think missing the playoff or the SEC championship game should generate hot seat talk. Oklahoma down the stretch would have to lose all 4 games for me to get to hot seat conversation. Because if I pick you to go 8-4 and you wind up going 7-5, I can't go, oh, that was a dramatic underperformance of my expectations. It's like, no, it's not. It's the way the schedule worked out. Once things rotate around in their 3rd year in the SEC next season, they should, emphasis on should, have an easier schedule, closer to what Texas has had for their first 2 years in the SEC. And boy, does Texas need that easy schedule this year. They're struggling week after week. Poor Mississippi State. Oh my goodness. I mean, what do the Bulldogs have to do? A 17-point lead in the 4th quarter for their first SEC win under Jeff Lebby, and the defense lets them down. I mean, they covered for my best bets, but my heart broke for them. That was tough. That was a tough sight in Starkville. They were ready to explode, ready to erupt, and they had it, and then all of a sudden they didn't. Props to Texas for coming back and figuring out how to play some offense there. But Oklahoma does not consistently play a good brand of offensive football. And so when John Mateer isn't 100%, or when your defense is having an off day, you don't have an ability to cover for that. It reminds me a bit, frankly, and I know everybody wants to hear about this right now, but just bear with me here. It reminds me of my own golf game. I'm a really good striker of the ball. My putting is dreadful. I have never been, I literally every round strive to be an average putter. If I can be an average putter, I am really good at golf, but I struggle to do that. And it holds me back from being better than I am. And I try to work on it as much as I can. Because if I have a day, which is going to happen in golf, even though I hit the ball very well, if I have a day where I don't hit it very well, I can't rely on my putting to pick me up and keep the score level. It will go off the rails. So that's how I look at Oklahoma, is they're operating with not a razor-thin margin, but too thin of a margin to be an elite team in college football. And that's what happened on Saturday. When your defense let you down, you didn't quite have enough. 26 points against that Ole Miss defense at home, whether or not Ole Miss didn't have a problem scoring. That Ole Miss defense, not particularly good. So disappointing day for Oklahoma. On the other side for Ole Miss, I don't know how Ole Miss doesn't wind up in the playoff. They're having the record season in terms of the actual cold, hard results that they were supposed to have last year. And coming into this season, Trinidad Chambliss, he's a dog. He's an absolute guy. You realize what he has thrown for in SEC play against the vaunted SEC defenses, a guy who was at Ferris State last year? Here's his lineup since entering, or his run of passing stats since entering SEC play. 353. Then they played Tulane. Went for 307. Tulane, pretty good defense though. 314. Only 253 against Washington State. 263 and 315. Lane Kiffin, quarterback whisperer, quarterback guru. Yeah, he should get that moniker. He's absolutely earned it across the board. He's taking a Division II guy and going through and likely going to take Ole Miss to the playoff, because Ole Miss has definitely never lost to an opponent they shouldn't, right? Lane Kiffin, that's never happened. It's never happened, right? Right, Lane? You've never done that. That couldn't possibly happen. If they can avoid that, they're going to the playoff. 11-1, I don't care what conference, I don't care what your schedule looks like, 11-1 better get you in the college football playoff. They have South Carolina, the Citadel, and Florida at home, and then at Mississippi State. That Egg Bowl could be wild. The Bulldogs will be hungry to play spoiler. I'm preemptively excited for that game that's many weeks away, but I want to hold. I want to stash my excitement to the back burner because I don't want to rush through this college football season. It's grand, glorious, wonderful, and beautiful every single week. Even this in a quote-unquote down week of college football is what you might hear some people say. Yeah, I don't really feel that way at all. That just means more crazy upsets are coming. That's the way this sport works. Ole Miss in the driver's seat to go to the college football playoff. Lane Kiffin's going to be there. And you know what? That's fun. That's exciting. Good for the Rebels. Outright winners, the highest of vibes this week for the Rebels. Bad vibes for Oklahoma. Because you lose at home in a conference game, yeah, you get bad vibes. But again, I don't think Oklahoma's bottoming out. I just think Sooner fans are starting to realize, yeah, okay, there's still some more work to do. Progress is being made, but there's still more work to be done. Ole Miss, though, has gotten through the meat of their schedule, and on the back half, or back third, yeah, they should be able to cruise. Should. Emphasis on should. I'm not trying to jinx you, Ole Miss. I'm just saying you should be able to make it. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.